Well, the information I'm about to show you has been hidden for years. In fact, that was the intent, that the American public would never see what I'm about to show you. The good news is the information has now surfaced and you're going to want to see it before they bury it again. What am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about an email that surfaced from Jeffrey right before his suicide, wink and a nod, if you get my drift, or so-called suicide. But anyway, what's interesting is it answers a lot of questions that I think people have had over the years. Got a lot to share with you. But for starters, I want to dive into something else that came out as a result of these files. As you know, the Democrats dropped a couple, very selective, and the Republicans have now dropped 20,000 in pages of emails with Jeffrey Epstein and other. Well, in one of those pages was the good old-fashioned name of Hillary Clinton. Yeah. And this is not the first time, right, that she's been, discovered in some of the Epstein files. Here's AF Post. Jeffrey Epstein claimed that Hillary Clinton had a relationship, a sexual one, with former attorney and White House counsel Vince Foster. Interesting. Who committed suicide, by the way, in 1993. Well, let's look at that little message. And here it is. It's from Jeffrey Epstein to Michael Wolff, the guy that he seems to talk to very often, the journalist. And it says, Nesbaum White House counsel. Michael Wolff says, what's the thumbnail on Nesbaum Foster? Because apparently Jeff had some kind of thumbnail, and he says, well, it's regarding Nesbaum White House counsel at the time and Hillary doing the naughties with Vince. Oh, Lord. That's pretty much a given. I used to interview Larry Nichols, and he really believed the two of them were together. Just put it that way. He's passed away now. But he was Bill Clinton's advisor for 10 years. So I think that gives him some credence on that. But on top of it, what's interesting, as you guys know, Vince Foster committed suicide in 1993. Again, I think in the same way that Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide, which wasn't, I don't think Vince Foster killed himself. But anyway, Foster's death remains an unsolved mystery. And here's the deal with his death and why people have an issue with it is there was a lack of fingerprints on the gun. Witness statements kind of didn't really go together. They were inconsistent. And there was the fact of the missing bullet. How does somebody commit suicide and not have a bullet anywhere? Just my 2 cents. Now, so what exactly happened and what was this email just before Jeffrey Epstein died? Well, before I get into that, just a quick break from my sponsor. Well, if you've been told the only way to control high blood pressure is by a cabinet full of pills, then you're going to want to listen up. A leading blood pressure doctor from Texas has discovered what he calls an old salt trick. In his study, participants used this simple method and saw their numbers drop into a healthy range, often in just weeks. In fact, the best part is many were even able to reduce their medications with their doctor's approval. Just imagine going from dangerously high readings to a near perfect blood pressure. Imagine saying goodbye to the endless cycles of prescriptions and the constant fear of heart problems. In fact, if you or someone you know struggles with high blood pressure and you're looking for a safe and natural alternative, then you are absolutely going to want to check this out. All you have to do is go to myprimal.life/Lisa BP. This could be exactly what you have been searching for, and I highly recommend you check it out today. All you have to do as well, if you want more information, scan this code right here on the screen. Scan it right now with your cell phone, and you can check it out. And if you want more information, there's also a link in the description box below, and if you're on your cell phone, you can find that with the More button. With all of that, back to the broadcast. So just what was contained in this email? Well, this was dropped by the Daily Mail. I'm not sure if they're the ones that discovered it, but it says Epstein wrote disturbing email to himself. Before his suicide, Jeffrey Epstein wrote a paranoid email to himself months before his death, rambling, get this, about Donald J. Trump and some of his dealings, by the way. But the bizarre rant came just a few months after the Miami Herald released their bombshell 3-part series that identified more than 60 women who said they were abused by Epstein when they were underage. So shortly thereafter, as you know, from all of that, he got arrested. And I think that obviously played a part into it. But either way, this is an email from Jeff to Jeff. And it's, just a few months before he died. All right, so take a look at this. And here's the actual letter written February 1st of 2019. And here it is. And the whole top part here, by the way, is him trying to, I think, justify some of his action. And he's just pissed off and mad. But anyway, he sends it to himself, and then eventually he forwards it on to Michael Wolff and says, have fun with this. But anyway, he says is a state crime. Never before has a man in his own house been charged with soliciting. In Florida, first offenders are required to take an education class, get pretrial diversion, no criminal record. There is a felony solicitation for a third offense. A grand jury was held and they found me guilty of 1 count of that. Because there were many girls, mandatory diversion sentences, a grand jury, usually only for capital murder cases, and he names the police officers, pulled my garbage for months, surveillance my house, let all the girls come and go in my house. I called the FBI. They did not like the grand jury result and released to the press the raw sewage of police interviews, i.e., no girl was cross-examined ever. He's saying they didn't talk to anybody. Unheard of, he says. The girls returned to the house multiple times for $200 for a rub, nothing regarding sexual in nature. Some worked in the massage parlors, mostly in their 20s, he says. There is only press stories told about him buying girlfriends from Slovakia, blah, 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 blah. But anyway, what he's doing here in this first entire half, in my opinion, is he's just trying to justify his actions. And that's it. I mean, any guy who goes to jail does that. Obviously, he was not. He was a pretty sick man, right? But anyway, he's complaining. And then the second half of this, he gets into Donald Trump. And let me just, before I even share this, because I don't think, let me just say, before I even share this, remember, he sent this to himself, and then he forwarded on to Michael Wolff. Michael Wolff has an absolute beef with Donald Trump. He hates him with a passion. He's been writing books about him and profiting off of writing these books and information about Donald J. Trump for a while. And so I think Jeff fed into that, and he's like, well, I'm going to give him as much dirt as I can and maybe even add to it and make it even more exuberant, right? Because if you think about it, people don't always tell the truth. And I don't necessarily think that that's the case here. It is an email from one person to himself, right? And then eventually to Michael Wolff. But here's what he says. Blank worked at Mar-a-Lago. Trump knew of it and came to my house many times during that period. The testimony of the houseman, John Alisi, confirmed it. Now I'm going to pause right there because this is, of course, where the mainstream media is going crazy. First of all, again, that name could be Virginia Giuffre yet again, because we know she worked at Mar-a-Lago and Donald Trump knew her. The fact that Donald Trump knew it, he could very well just be talking about the fact that this person, whomever it is, I'm going to guess Virginia Giuffre, but it could be someone else, worked at Mar-a-Lago. That's what he's saying he knew. I mean, you can interpret that a lot of ways. But again, this is coming from a convicted felon who's not exactly honest all the time. And then he says, he's been to my house many times during that period. He could have gone to the house to talk and try to get information on what's going on. I just don't know. But that is the case. And there is nothing saying he did anything wrong in any way, shape, or form. But it goes on, right? And it says this, he never got a massage, which means he didn't do anything regarding that. Abe Gossman, a friend of mine, ran into financial difficulty with assisted living homes. His home was listed as 45 with no takers on it, and he and I agreed at a price of 30. His wife ends up in jail for lying to the bankruptcy trustee about her jewelry. This is in the summer of 2004. I became a stalking horse bidder at 36 million, i.e. if someone bid higher, I would receive a fee. Trump then buys the house. So basically what happens is this a Florida property dispute with Trump. That's it. He's pissed off. through this bidding war, if you will, and he's mad. And so he's just venting, reventing, because this has already happened a while back. But I think he's writing this story to himself to perfect it, and then he's going to forward it on to Michael Wolff, which he eventually does right here at the top. You can see he forwarded it to Michael Wolff 2/1/2019, and he wrote it to himself just before that, kind of getting it better. But anyway, it's about this whole house issue and the whole 9 yards. And Donald Trump putting his name on the house and yada, yada. You can pause and read it. It's just really all about the beef that they had with the Florida dispute. So there it is. Interesting to say the least. So ultimately, like I said, I think Jeff was entertaining his newfound friend, Michael Wolff, because Michael Wolff hated Trump, and he was just trying to give him all the details on the dirt that he already had, and let Michael Wolff know how bad Trump is, because, he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago, and rightly so, because, Jeff was a freaking creep P word, right? Anyhow, wanted to share all of that with you. I love you all. I'm Lisa Haven, signing out.